Today, we will be talking about 10 best practices for accelerating your cloud migration. And those 10 best practices are based on our practical experience of delivering cloud migrations and digital transformations. And because we have twice as more slides for 10 best practices, some of the slides will be numbered, and that's how you will see that that is actually a best practice. And some of the slides will be used to emphasize some points and clarify some points. My name is Anya Episheva, and I work for AWS Professional Services. My role is senior consultant, and my daily life is to scope and deliver digital transformations and migrations. And before I will start talking about 10 best practices, I would like to put migrations into context. And despite our customers coming from different sectors and industries, them being big and small, the situation, the underlying situation is the same. Usually, the cost of the status quo takes 80% of their budgets, and all the funds available for any business change are extremely limited. That means that our customers have very large technical debt that was created over time because workloads and processes were implemented and then changed and changed and changed over and over again to satisfy business needs. And many of our customers, they want to flip that mix, 80 to 20, and refocus their resources on delivering more business value and adding to the competitive advantage they want to have on the market. And the migration itself is a perfect exercise to flip that mix, because you want to free up the money for you to do something meaningful for the business. And that means that migration and the business case for migration always has that cost optimization component in it. But it shouldn't be only it. And with that message, let me pass the mic to Kati.
Thanks, Anya. Can everybody hear me? Because I sense that was quite quiet just then. There's a lot of noise going on around. I could barely hear you, so I don't know if anyone can turn up Anya's mic. Is that right? No one can really hear Anya? Okay, cool. My name is Kathy Hubbard, and I'm also a consultant at AWS Professional Services. And as Anya said, we're here today to talk to you about 10 best practices that will help you migrate to the cloud and accelerate to the cloud, with the emphasis being on accelerate. Obviously, there's many more best practices that you could adopt, but we wanted to bring you some that are based on our real-life experiences with customers. So let's begin. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought already. It's not good, is it? So let's begin by looking at the business goals and compelling events that drive organizations to adopt a cloud strategy. Why? Because depending on what these are, your approach will differ. There are many paths available to you during your migration journey, and there are many trade-offs and decisions along the way. So it's important to be clear about your priorities and avoid any costly delays. For example, you might have some tight deadlines, because you want to exit your data center. So you might want to introduce some technology trade-offs to be on time and save costs from any delays. Or your main focus might be that you want to make your organization more agile and are looking to transform to a more DevOps style of delivery to improve your throughput and delivery efficiency. Behind me, you can see some examples of our customers and their different business drivers to move to the cloud. News Corp, for example, wanted to reduce their costs. They did this by consolidating 56 data centers down to 6, moving 75% of their infrastructure to the cloud. This resulted in reallocating more than $100 million towards key business drivers. Kaplan, on the other hand, wanted to improve their operational resilience, so they migrated 8 of their 12 data centers to AWS, therefore improving their performance, reliability, as well as improving their costs. So that's where we start, understanding the reasons that you want to migrate to the cloud. Migrating to the cloud is a transformational change affecting every aspect of your organization. It's a really big deal, right? So it's good practice for organizations to start with some small projects run by the innovators within their organization. These projects are used to understand the business value and prove they can solve real business problems using the cloud. As they learn more, they next focus on building a foundation to deliver their continuous cloud projects by establishing a centre of excellence, a cloud centre of excellence, which hopefully you've heard of. The value of the cloud is normally seen in a very short space of time, but to take it to the next level and further accelerate, it's really important to secure executive support. This will enable you to cross the chasm and really begin to accelerate your migration journey, retiring technical debt and starting to innovate again. Once you cross this chasm, we see many enterprises hit a tipping point where they actually become more proficient in managing their cloud environment than their on-premises. And they begin to optimize both their IT and business functions thanks to the possibilities that have been opened from leveraging a cloud platform across their business. Without securing executive support, we've seen many migration programs come to a halt or even fail and just end up being an IT project. So, our second best practice for you today is to make sure you get your executive sponsorship to support your migration program and be really vocal about it. So, now we've defined our business drivers and goals and understand our priorities, and we've secured our executive support, our next step is to actually start to migrate. At AWS, we have a very prescriptive approach to migrations over 3 phases. You may have heard about them: MRA, MRP, and the actual migration. The MRA, which is the Migration Readiness Assessment, is all about exploring how mature an organization is from a cloud perspective and how ready they are to migrate. Next, the MRP phase, which is the Migration Readiness and Planning phase, actually starts to move some workloads to the cloud and ensures operational readiness before moving on to the actual migration project itself. When you start your MRP, you normally see some additional costs, such as duplicate environments, some staff training costs, maybe some consulting costs, additional license costs, and so on. So you should take every opportunity to accelerate this phase as much as you can so you can minimize the impact of what we call the migration bubble. So this brings us to our third best practice already to help accelerate your migration. It's important to understand how ready you are before you begin to migrate to the cloud. There is potential to fail or even cause delay if you begin to migrate before you're actually ready. At AWS, we have 2 mechanisms to help assess your readiness: our Cloud Adoption Framework and our Migration Readiness Assessment, which hopefully some of you will be familiar with. The AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, otherwise known as CAF, focuses around 6 perspectives. Each perspective covers distinct responsibilities owned or managed by functionally related stakeholders. These are business, people, and governments, which focus on business capabilities; platform, security, and operations perspectives that focus on technical capabilities. The output from CAF is a set of action plans to help you prepare for your transition to cloud by uncovering gaps in your existing skills and processes, as well as identify what you want your to-be state to look like. But we also have our Migration Readiness Assessment that I mentioned earlier that helps to further understand your migration readiness baseline. This assessment will help you to evaluate your organization's cloud competence, capability, and commitment. It's based around a 60-question survey that is aligned to the AWS CAF. The MRA will help identify your gaps in your organization that you may have to be addressed in the next phase of the migration, the MRP, Migration Readiness and Planning phase, before moving to the migration itself. The MRA helps you to analyze the different areas of your business, including outside of the traditional technology teams, that are required to work together to successfully migrate to the cloud. As you can see and are now hopefully aware, cloud adoption requires buy-in from many areas within your organization, not just the technology teams, but with your clear understanding of your business goals, drivers, and priorities, and with your executive sponsorship, this should be really easy. But also bear in mind that you'll never be 100% ready to migrate. You'll probably start to move workloads before you are 100% ready. There will be some gaps that need to be addressed, but it's important to get the minimum building blocks there in place first before you do. You can always iterate on the process and improve as you move. So there we have our first 3 best practices that help you to identify your business drivers and goals and your priorities, secure your executive sponsorship, and then assess your migration readiness, outlining your immediate goals. As Anya said at the beginning, these best practices are not all about the technology. Over to you, Anya, and I can have some water.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Okay, just checking. That's okay. Okay, as Katie mentioned, we use Cloud Adoption Framework to assess the customer's readiness for the migration engagement. And we use the same approach when we are structuring our migration engagements. So it's the same 6 perspectives. For the business perspective, we have migration business case, and it's better to be positive. And for people perspective, we have skills and cloud center of excellence, with all the conversations about new roles, new skills, and all the training courses that should be in place. For platform part, we have the landing zone or a platform to put our applications on. And those conversations are about multiple accounts, network design, identity and access management, and shared services like DNS, CI/CD pipelines, and everything you want to have to operate applications on AWS after migrations. For security, we will have a very structured approach, and I will be telling you about it later. For operations, we have also a very structured approach, and Kati will be telling about it later. And I believe that I missed one, and yes, of course, the governance perspective usually is being missed. And for governance perspective, for our migrations, we have migration plan and change management. So our customers and our experience is that we are being asked about migrations when the perceived pain of the status quo is bigger than the fear of change. But fear of change is still there, and some additional actions and some additional conversations should be in place to reinforce the message about new normal and to reinforce the message about all the changes. But it should be easy because we should have executive support. On top of the 6 work streams, we also prefer to focus on 2 more aspects of cloud migrations. And the first aspect is about assessment, application assessment and discovery. And the second aspect is about gaining that practical experience with your migrations early on. So let me start with application discovery and assessment. So can you raise your hand if you haven't seen that slide before? Okay, so I would say that 80% of people have seen the London Underground map of cloud migration patterns. So initially 5 patterns were introduced by Gartner 7 years ago. Then AWS came with 6 patterns. And the easiest pattern is rehost. Basically, you lift and shift your applications on AWS. Then you have replatform if you decided to move from WebLogic to Tomcat. Then you have repurchase if you decided to procure your existing application using software as a service. Then you have re-architect if you decided to go crazy and re-architect your application. It's difficult, it's time-consuming, but the cost optimization and agility benefits are there. And my favorite 2 patterns are, of course, retire and retain, because that's one of the ways of accelerating your migration, making it smaller, leaving some of the applications and not spending your resources on something that will die anyway. Going back to patterns of rehost, re-architect, and replatform. Usually we tend to say that rehost is the best pattern for most of our customers because we have a lot of automated tools to accelerate your migrations. And AWS partner ecosystem has a lot of tools to do the same. But reality is slightly different because if you have identified cost optimization and licensing savings as part of your business outcomes for the migration engagement, maybe you would like to re-platform your application and start using managed database with built-in licensing option. Or again, if you have identified one of your business goals for the migration engagement as better resiliency for your application, maybe the same managed database with built-in resiliency will be your choice. And the migration engagement, from our point of view, it's always a series of trade-offs in terms of costs, money, costs, resources, and time. And the idea here is to seek for small improvements you can afford, and those improvements can bring you a lot of benefits pretty quickly. So the principal number, the best practice number 4, is about aiming for lift and shift, but preventing copy and paste of technical debt that you have on the platform. And just a quick slide, the ugliest slide, I really hope that is the ugliest slide you have seen today. And it's about AWS migration tools, and it's about our partner ecosystem. So you see on the slide that we have AWS Migration Hub, and the purpose of that tool is, first of all, help you to understand what do you have in terms of applications, servers, and integrations between those servers, and then manage your migration, being able to provide reports to your executive sponsors and to your teams. And the beauty of that tool is that some of our partner solutions can be integrated with the tool pretty easily, so you are free to use any tool, almost any tool you like. And talking about application discovery, we have AWS Application Discovery Service, and talking about migrations, of course, we have AWS Service Migration Service. And 2 of my favorite tools are AWS Database Migration Service, because that's how you can satisfy your business outcomes and still be on time with your migration, moving your databases from your virtual machine to something managed. And AWS Schema Conversion Tool, if you would like to do something with your database, you can re-platform your database using that tool, and some magic, of course. And talking about people. So that was the most technical slide of that presentation for those of you who are awaiting some technology. So let's go back to the people. And when we start working with our customers, usually we need to make a lot of decisions pretty quickly in the first couple of days. And unfortunately, there are not enough information to make those decisions. And our approach is to make decisions slightly and automate a lot. And I have 3 stories for you here. First story is about searching for opportunities to make a two-way door decision, a revolving door decision. Unfortunately, it wasn't invented by me, or it wasn't invented by anyone inside professional services. Jeff Bezos, a couple of years ago, he was talking about how to deal with the lack of information. What we should do if we have only 60 or 70% of information available and we need to make a decision. The trick is to search, to look for those decisions that can be easily undone and become proficient in undoing those decisions later. Being specific in terms of migration, sometimes even you don't need to undo the decision, you just need to postpone it. Let's say you're pretty comfortable with the number of AWS accounts you want to have for your applications. But how many VPCs we should have for every application we are moving on AWS? I've participated in many of those discussions. So our answer is, let's start with 1. Let's move our first application and then have that discussion. The second story is about trying to make less decisions by reusing them over and over again. Here we try to introduce a lot of patterns when it comes to application migration. And those patterns can be very simple. Let's say we agree that all the applications will be moved as containers, AWS ECS, plus managed database, AWS RDS. And because all the teams, all the application migration teams understand what's going on and what's the definition of done is, it's easy for them to reuse all the artifacts that were created by different teams, and it's easy for them to continue to push for that pattern even if they have a lot of technical impediments, because they see a nice simple goal in front of them, and that's how we avoid snowflakes and excessive technical debt. And the third story, and the third story is about automating all those decisions, because to accelerate your migration, in case if you need to undo your decision, it's better to just turn it off rather to change your configuration. And going back to my first example about VPC, if you have that VPC pattern defined and automated using AWS CloudFormation, you can reuse that pattern and that template over and over again. Talking about automation. From our point of view, security is the best area to automate when you are migrating your applications. First of all, speaking from our experience, many of our customers have a pretty mature security posture when it comes to preventive and restrictive security controls. When it comes to proactive and remediation security controls, we don't have a lot of sunk costs. And with AWS, we can automate a lot of proactive security. So that's the good idea to have as part of your migration engagement, and that's how you will be able to please your security stakeholders, and that's how you will be able to demonstrate that you are creating a lot of benefits moving your applications on AWS already. Some of our customers have the luxury to invite security teams into conversations pretty early, just a couple of weeks before going live. It was okay because all the building blocks and all the processes were defined on premises. And with AWS, it's different. All the building blocks are different, and processes can be different too. And that's why we prefer and we ask our customers to invite security teams to the conversations pretty early, from day one. And on the slide, you see AWS account structure, one of the flavors we have and we recommend to our customers. And you see on the slide that we have a special account, AWS account, for all the things security. Usually that is being positively received by the security guys, and that helps us to avoid any delays and any unnecessary conversations because people aren't feeling isolated. And the last bit about security. Yes. Okay, that's the usual scope we have for our cloud migrations. As AWS, we have a really good white paper about security ethics. And for our migrations, we prefer to focus on first basic 5 security ethics, and you see them on the slide. It's about identity and access management, logging and monitoring, infrastructure security, incident response, and data protection. That's the MVP, minimum viable product for us when it comes to security conversations for our migrations. Yeah, over to you, Katya.
Thanks, Anya. As Anya said, we need to move quickly with decisions so we don't stall and we can actually start to move some workloads. So this leads us to our 7th best practice. We encourage teams to learn by delivering, the fail fast mentality. The cloud approach helps teams to create an iterative, delivery-focused framework that really speeds up product delivery and providing the business with usable features and services really quickly. If you start with a strategic project, so something that will impress and get noticed within your organization, this will really help to start build the momentum of cloud awareness within your organization. By starting simple, your teams can build up to more complex solutions as they learn and mature their skills and build their confidence. You're not going to change your organization overnight, but the sooner you can start adopting agile methods, the quicker you can begin to transform. Training is also really important. Everyone in your organization should be able to take the cloud practitioner training and have an awareness of cloud. It's available online and it's really easy to take. If you're able to afford to train your people in advance, do it as soon as you can. And if you have executive support, this will really help get your training budgets approved. But if you need to crack on and you don't have the luxury of formal training up front, make sure you do revisit it at a later stage and encourage your teams to take their certifications to demonstrate their new cloud skills. In fact, many of our customers use the SA Associate certification as a benchmark of AWS knowledge within their organization. It's also worth considering to invest in DevOps and Scrum Agile training to also help your teams adapt to new approaches that work best with the cloud. So involve everyone from your organization in your training plans, not just the IT teams. As we've seen, business functions are also affected, and then everyone will feel part of the journey. Based on our experience, organizations who start with a hands-on Tiger team focused on the end-to-end delivery of cloud migration are more likely to gain trust from their colleagues and become the experts that people go to internally. Typically, most enterprises tend to be change resistant. So a hands-on cloud Tiger team works well as an accelerant early on and acts as a delivery catalyst. Around 5 to 7 people is a really good start, and try to staff them up around the CAF perspectives of business and technical capabilities. Finding people who have enthusiasm about the cloud and not just the skills required can really also help make a difference, because passionate individuals are key to succeeding in any paradigm-shifting initiative. It's also a good idea to set up a charter with metrics and KPIs for your Cloud Centre of Excellence. Then you can easily measure progress against them and see the value that they're adding. You might include metrics such as IT resource utilisation, number of releases each day, week, month as a sign of increasing agility, and the number of projects that the Cloud Centre of Excellence is influencing, and so on. Ideally, you would staff your Centre of Excellence team with full-time dedicated resources so they can focus without any distractions from other commitments and really build momentum within your organisation. And if you rotate people from other lines of businesses, they will also become familiar with the charter, responsibilities, etc., and then can promote those learnings within their own teams. So, best practice number 8 is to find the innovators within your company, place them into a dedicated cloud tiger team, and get them to start identifying and promoting cloud best practices early on to really get things moving and start influencing the rest of your organisation. Many times we see organisations start to move workloads to the cloud and really building momentum, but then they get blocked because they're not operationally ready. So it's really important to involve the operations teams early on and wear both hats. Think of it from the developer and the operations side, so you will avoid any unnecessary delays. Don't leave your operations teams guessing. They don't want to have things chucked over the wall at them and not know anything about it. Use your migration to the cloud as a catalyst to start embedding operations into the design of your applications from the start. Then you know you will be production ready. So our 9th best practice is migrate with operations in mind. So what do I mean about that? When you think about deployment and testing, automate your workload deployments and testing to avoid operational issues. When you're doing your monitoring, ensure your workloads have built-in health checks that report on service availability throughout the stack to give visibility to the operations teams on how workloads are performing and enable them to act fast should there be any operational problems. With logging, make sure each workload has sufficient logs and that they are helpful to people, and design them with a centralised logging system in mind. This will help you to understand what has happened and give insight into the internal state of your systems. The operations teams will then be able to analyse the logs and create actionable reports and configure appropriate alerting to get the most out of the log data. You also need to consider what your operations teams will look like as you migrate to the cloud, as this may change. So think about who will be in the team, what skills do they need, and what roles and responsibilities would they have. So now back to Anya to reveal our final best practice.
Okay, so all the best practices before were about that second stage when you were moving a couple of your first applications on AWS. This is the best practice for the day when you want to scale up. And what we usually see is that our customers and we, as AWS professional services, we tend to preserve all the frameworks and all the processes and all the structures we had in the early days. And it's important, if we want to scale up, to sit down, reflect, and understand what processes and structures should be changed to avoid any delays and to truly scale up our migrations and to be able to move at the bigger, faster pace. So the first point here is about moving from informal show and tell meetings. So as AWS professional services, we use agile delivery framework for our migrations with agile teams working in sprints. And we have regular show and tells. And at the beginning, they are pretty informal. just to keep teams motivated and allow them to share their learnings and their successes. But later in the process, we have them more focused and more formal. That allows us to make sure that all the best practices that we have on this engagement will be converted to policies later for other parts of their organization to use. The second point here is to look at your teams. Sometimes our customers need to move a lot of applications, hundreds of applications at a pace. And we have only 10 or maybe 20 people who will move in their first 50 applications. How do we approach that? We have two options here. First option is to start inviting people outside of the program to share that experience and to learn on the job and put all the people, some of the people who were on the program outside to help other teams to prepare for migration better or to share best operational practices. The second approach is to regroup your teams who were initially, I assume, focused on moving a single application pattern on AWS, now to be focused on one of the steps of the delivery framework. One team will be responsible for the migration, the second team will be responsible for integration, and the third team will be responsible for validation, and of course, you will have a team who is responsible for the design. And the last bit is about documenting the process. So we usually say that the migration engagement is once in a lifetime experience for a customer because you really don't want to have it again. But the idea here is to continue documenting all the lessons learned and experiences you had because bits and pieces of it can be reused later when you will be optimizing your operations processes even more. Let's say a go-live sequence for one of your applications can be used later as a business continuity sequence for many and many of your applications. So the message here for our last best practice is to sit down and reflect and maybe change some of the processes and some of the frameworks that brought you to this successful place. So that's the 10 best practices we wanted to show you today. And we started with business engagement and understanding your real goals for your migration. Then we talked about executive support and crossing that chasm for you to be able to move quickly and to decrease the size of the migration bubble. Then we discussed about baselining your current state. And then we talked slightly about assessing and discovering your applications and trying to avoid copy and paste approach. Then we talked about making decisions quickly and automating them, mentioned about security from day one, talked about operations and design and migrating with operations in mind. Sorry. And talked about cloud center of excellence, using your innovators and early adopters to start bringing the structure into your organization. And the last bit was about reflecting and changing all the frameworks or some of the frameworks that worked for you before. So from my point of view, Katie, that's it. Should we finish?
I think we could probably just maybe give them one more as a Brucey bonus, right? Because they stayed to the end and we're really grateful for not walking out, so thank you. There's one more best practice that can really, really help with your migration to the migration to the cloud even. Get some help. Moving to the cloud is a really big undertaking and a huge transformational change for many organizations. We totally understand that most companies don't have the budget to fully train their teams up front or the luxury of time to spend planning and executing their migrations. There are normally many external pressures to do things fast. So one way you can assist with this is to bring in some help from AWS Professional Services or one of our many partners who can help you augment your teams and share their experience and knowledge to accelerate your migration even more. So Anya and I hope that you enjoyed spending the last however many minutes with us and hope that you've learnt something, and we thank you very much for your time, especially with it being the last session of the day, and we wish you all lots of many successful migrations. Thank you very much.